I'm Jim Anderton, and this is the Industry Insights and Trends podcast. On this show, we'll explore the length and breadth of 21st century engineering, from civil engineering mega projects to innovation at the quantum level. We speak with subject matter experts and industry watchers from every sector of the engineering discipline. You know, in the great age of exploration, hundreds of years ago, the age of sail, that maps and charts often had an annotation that said terra incognita. Land was there. We knew land was there, but no one knew what it was or to what extent it reached. And that's kind of where we are today industrially and in the economy as a whole. Things have changed, and things have changed in ways that could not have been predicted even 6 months ago, and no one really knows where it's going. I'm joined by Rupender Tara. He's editor-in-chief of EngTechnica.com. And Rupender, you're out there on the West Coast, and you've got your ear to the ground with many firms involved in engineering, manufacturing, large and small, the design side of the equation, basically. Everything is in turmoil right now. We're talking about container ships that are not arriving, ports that are down to 50% of their volume, and a massive move to reshore manufacturing to America as a whole. What are you hearing on the West Coast, basically? Is there an optimism, or is there a sense that we're going in circles?
Oh, I think you said it, Jim. That's we sense a little turmoil on our side too. It's quite a bit of it. Yeah, no, and a lot of uncertainty. A lot of uncertainty. The ports, just drove by a port yesterday, a big one in Oakland, and just you got a sense that things were not moving.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's funny you mentioned it, because I know that we have a situation where, in the manufacturing side especially, is that there's been a tendency to push part of the design function down to the vendor level. So it was a matter now, if I need an injection mold, basically, I didn't just have it maybe made in China. I'd ask them to design it as well. Because of course it's cheaper to do that. So there were some at the time who were saying, "Gee, are we going to lose some intrinsic design capability, in America by pushing that sort of down the supply chain?" Are there going to be consequences for that, do you think? I mean, is this going to be an issue during reshoring?
Oh, I think so. I think so. There's a lot of manufacturing and design capabilities. Design capability, I don't think really went offshore. I think we managed to retain that in the U.S. But a lot, definitely manufacturing went. But there is now, with all this talk about tariffs, there's a lot of talk about reshoring. And companies are looking to, to, people are starting to realize that reshoring, we talked about it for a long time, you and I, Jim, but I think it might actually happen because it's a big advantage to companies locating their manufacturing here in the U.S., I should say, because then they can escape the tariffs. So that's making everybody think, oh, manufacturing is coming back. It won't be our companies manufacturing here; it'll be the foreign companies manufacturing here. But I don't know if you does that qualify as reshoring if it's another company though? I don't
Well,
know.
that's an interesting question, and that brings up a good point. If a Chinese firm decides to injection mold cheap children's toys at a plant in Alabama, they may employ line workers. But what if the management engineering teams are all from overseas? You're getting some job creation, but in the age of automation, where to get costs down, we're talking about automating lights out plants. Basically, how much employment would we generate from a major reshoring issue?
That's true. A modern factory has very little labor, so and all the wealth would still be going overseas. And yes, you get a few jobs, but the kind of factories that are everyone's talking about now, modern factories, jobs are not, it's not going to take like all the bring back all the manufacturing jobs. Not by a long shot. It couldn't.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what I'm hearing, of course, especially here in the Midwest, a lot on this side of the continent, is that there already are labor shortages in manufacturing. It already is difficult to find qualified people on the engineering side or on the production side as it stands right now. Let alone shop floor personnel. That's a challenge as well, to find skilled people that can do those jobs. So, in a world where there aren't enough machinists or tool makers or people to sort of make the machines and the tooling to reshore this stuff. Uh, what happens now? I mean, can you just sort of flip a switch and then turn around and say, okay, we need 100,000 more tool and die makers next week?
No, you absolutely cannot. I mean, it's for so long, manufacturing has not been how should I say, machining, manufacturing, production has not been the preferred choice of young people, and especially since they saw that, oh, all the jobs are overseas. So there's a huge gap in the pipeline, if you will, in that education and training of these people, and also very much a desire or a, how should I say, a there's no attraction for that kind of thing. There hasn't been an attraction to that because it's been seen as a, well, you probably can't get a job now. Now that there are jobs, now what are you going to do? You can't. You have to restart that whole process of getting people back in the educational and training pipeline, and make them aware that hey, there are jobs. I mean, you know, from having your ear to the ground, that there's a lot of need now in manufacturing centers, but I mean, how does the average person know that? Average person considering a vocation, would they know that? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in the sort of mass media, and you see this all the time. You'll turn on a major a network, for example, TV program, and you'll see B-roll from auto assembly lines from the 1960s, the sparks flying, and they sell this image, this obsolete image of what manufacturing used to be, dark and dirty. And it's no wonder that you look at young people who say, "I want to be a coder." I don't want to. I don't want to be swinging a wrench on a dirty assembly line. When in fact, it's really it's the clean white collar aspect of the thing is really where the demand is and where the great jobs are. But we've been talking about this for a decade now of how to get more young people interested in engineering. And is it just a question of is it a question of prestige? Is it a question of pay? I mean, every parent wants their child to become a doctor or a lawyer, and I think engineer comes down the list.
Yeah, yeah, it takes some. It will say take some doing, but I think it can be done. The modern factory, the factory that is going to be created now, the newer ones, they're going to be not like those Oldsmobile plants. They're not going to be the leather apron kind of things. They're extremely they're going to be extremely technical. They'll be run. We talked to a company just this week about a factory operating system where the entire the entire company, the entire factory is governed by a single platform, right? With all the machines, right, including all the machines are included. The systems are included. The software systems like ERP, PLM, CAM, they're all controlled by a central platform. And so that's a very technical factory. I mean, that's a factory that requires not just tweaking off the conveyor belts and the machines. That's not a screwdriver kind of tweak. That's a software tweak. So the factory of the future is going to require not just as much, but a considerable amount of technical information. So I think that kind of thing would appeal to a person. We have to, as our job as journalists is to educate people on that trend, and that is actually happening. But still, it needs industry and media, other types of media, to step forth and say, "Hey, look, modern factories are not like your dad's factory. Your laid off job. Your dad could have got laid off at U.S. Steel, but you have an opportunity now to really be technically oriented, not just a sparks flying, chips falling on the floor kind of guy."
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting you brought that up because people like the National Association of Manufacturers, many experts are saying that if you actually look at aggregate output, American manufacturing never went away. Employment imploded. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Automation is one. And the other is there's been a general move up market, I think, amongst American manufacturers where they don't want to do the high volume, low margin, simple thing, injection molding the mops and pails because they want to move up market and make higher margin, higher value products in a more sophisticated way. And we backfilled the need for the mops and pails and the kids' toys to offshore sources who have low enough labor rates and no regulation, so they can make money with 5 points of margin on an injection molded toothbrush. But now under this tariff regime, it looks like if the goal is to bring all that back to the United States, um, are you going to be able to reverse that process? Are you able to turn individuals that are sort of have moved up market and are making high value products and say, no, we're gonna go ahead and make 2 million toothbrushes a year?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of change. I think the whole automated factories, the automation in general, automated factories specifically, they do with less jobs. I mean, there's no question about it. There's going to be less need for humans, but the humans that are needed are going to be better off. So I don't. I don't know. I think there's an ethical question here. Like if automation goes the way we're seeing it, what are we going to do with all these extra humans? Right? There's going to be extra humans, and they just not there's so much activity and production that's done with less with machines now, machines and robots and AI. You know, people argue about this, and this is a genuine fear of a lot of people. Am I going to be replaced by AI? And short answer for the aggregate manufacturing community is there's a very yes, you very well could be. You very well could be. Best quote I heard about this is the only the only jobs that are going to go away with AI are the ones that don't use AI. If you use AI, you know how to use AI, and it can be used across the board for so many things now. It's starting to creep into manufacturing, and it's starting to creep into design. Uh, I'd say I'd say you start using it. Right? Just the other day, I had a conversation where I'll say a civilian, somebody not in design and not in manufacturing, are saying, "What can I do with a?" This person is a real estate agent, said, and they hadn't used ChatGPT, and I thought, "Oh my God, here's somebody who's heard about it but is not using it." And I thought, whoa, it's really not everywhere. You kind of get in this our little echo chamber in media and say, oh, everybody's using it because we are, but that's not the case. So where am I going with this? Well, the average person going into manufacturing may not think about using AI like that, but it's super useful, or it can be, right? It can be very useful, and you better learn it, because if you don't learn it, you're not going to get that high tech job in a factory environment, because those factories are all using AI. They're all getting high tech. They're all getting super automated. You better show that you're up there with them. Right?
It is remarkable. I mean, and there it is going to be disruptive. But you brought that point about what are we going to do with the people? I mean, 200 plus years ago, the Luddites were saying the same thing. I mean, you introduce a cotton gin, and you turn textile manufacturing from literally a cottage industry into modern mass production, and you generate mass unemployment. Now, it's socially, I agree with you. What I'm hearing is the answer is all this will make life much better in the future. All this automation means that we'll enjoy a standard of living we can't even imagine right now. But no one talks about what happens during the transition phase. So turn out and say your great grandchildren are going to have an unimaginably great life. That's kind of like cold comfort for those of us that are wondering if we're going to have a job next week. So,
Oh, it is, and I think we fall prey to let's say we're technophiles, or we're technocrats, or we're technological champions, right? Because we hear about all this stuff and we think it's great. But and we'll probably ride that wave. We'll probably ride the next wave because we know about what it entails. But honestly, there's quite a few people, I think, that if they don't catch that wave, they're gonna they're gonna they're gonna go under. There's a real ethical problem here that AI technocrats just managed to gloss over and say, "Oh no, you'll get a job." Yeah, the robot's gonna do your job, but now you're liberated to do another job, like install or program the robot. And all the time I'm thinking, well, that's not the same person, though. That's not the same person who's displaced, who's going to program the robot. It's somebody else, right? You are, what are you going to do? You're going to be on welfare, right? So,
well, it's a good
yeah.
question. I mean, look at you take out from a shop floor perspective. If you have an expert machinist, something which takes really decades to develop a really high facility with, and a very, very respectable, very skilled and important job. When numerical control machine tools came out, they discovered quite quickly that an experienced machinist is the best person to program the G code, because they already have an intuitive feel over things like feeds and speeds, and how to approach a cut, or do a counter bore in a hole. So it was logical that you would transition them and teach them how to program. And then a lot of them did that. They stopped physically, spinning hand wheels, and they started actually programming G code. But I am not convinced that AI won't actually aggregate all the knowledge of all the world's great machinists and tool makers, basically, and be able to do that automatically in seconds. Now, at that point, the question is that what is the role of that machine tool programmer now? Because there's no place up for him to go at that point, or her in this case.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going in a funnel this way, right? There's a lot of people that have to find a spot and higher up in their funnel, and there's not that many spots there, right? So if one robot can take the place of 10 people, one of those 10 people may be elevated to the higher spot. I'm reminded of was at my conference in earlier this year, CES, Consumer Electronics Show, and one of the biggest attractions, they have multiple floors. Well, the biggest attraction though was a robot, and a robot because it was operating in a factory environment, sort of, as much as they could set up on a show. And all it was doing was picking up, very gingerly, picking up a crate from one location and putting it somewhere else. And I, which is like, okay,
So what?
that's that's so what? This is like no big deal, right? Because and it wasn't having an easy time of it. It was very slow. It was tentative, right? But it was quite an attraction. There were crowds around that one robot, right? This was like they had never seen one. This was amazing. This was like it wasn't scary to me. It was like ho hum and underwhelming. But to the crowd, it was this is scary shit. This is the guy that's going to take my job, right? To in many ways. I mean, if you can do it, to me, it seemed like this got a long way to go before this becomes useful. But I think there's a general and it has to be managed. This fear of jobs being taken away. I don't think technocrats are doing a very good job of explaining it just by saying, "Hey, you have a job. Your job will be different, and you'll be relieved. You'll be glad to be relieved of your job because your job was so boring, right?" I don't think that's convincing anyone.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. And you know what? I've often wondered this. I wonder if it requires sort of a management cultural change within manufacturing. Maybe what it's going to take is a situation where you have line workers who are turning a screw with a screwdriver, and they're looking into the abyss as this technology improves. And maybe it needs a corporate culture where we turn around and say, "You're all going to have a job here, and we will retrain you at whatever level necessary to move you up market to do higher value things." But yes, you're right. Your spot on the assembly line is going to be replaced by a robot, but that's not a bad thing. What'll come out of that in the end is a more profitable company, better wages for you, and a nicer job.
It would be nice in a utopian world, right? It would be nice if companies did that. I think in a corporate world, though, I won't mention any names here, but in the corporate world, there was just one company which just laid off 9% of its people, and it was having a great year. It's like it was profits were highest and revenue was the highest, but it laid off 9% of the people. It's a tech company. It's a tech company, and so the old rules like rewarding employees for a job well done. I don't know if it's there anymore, especially in tech. So I think what you mentioned, Jim, is a very noble thing if you are looking out for the people, but is technology looking out for people or is technology looking to advance itself?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going down that kind of social rabbit hole of this conversation, but it's an interesting point. You brought that up, which is a Wall Street driven thing. That is a good point because if you were loyal to a firm and you gave it your best and you were laid off because of a downturn or a fall in sales, it is easy to rationalize that loss of employment and have a reasonable expectation that if things turn around, I could get recalled. But you're right. If you move into a world in which if you give your best and the corporation is fabulously profitable and you are laid off just because it can make the company incrementally more profitable, that tells you that you could lose either way. You could lose when times are great, you could lose when times are poor. And the question then is how do you motivate those employees to come to work and give their best every day if they've got to be thinking about what's my next job going to be and what do I have to do to do that?
Yeah, it shouldn't. I think we're heading towards a future where people are going to be scrambling to, without the longevity assured of a career, you're not going to, you can't aspire to get the gold watch after 25 years or 50 years. How is even a tech worker? Your tech workers, look at tech workers. They have to like coders. Right? Okay, in cold days, they used to code in Fortran. Now they have to code in, then they had to code in C++, right? And machinists, they had to learn how to use G code. Well, now they have to learn how to get G code out of ChatGPT, right? And coders have to learn Python because Python's a language of AI, right? So their world is constantly changing. Ha- And their world's changing faster than anyone's. I mean, how are they going to keep up?
Yeah. A primarily rhetorical question. Rupender, we could talk about this for hours. Hope we'll have a chance to talk about this again. In the meantime, Rupender Tara, editor-in-chief of EngTechnica.com. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
You're welcome, Jim. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening, folks. Bye-bye.
That's it for today's Industry Insights and Trends podcast, brought to you by Engineering.com. If you like this program and want to keep pace with the latest innovations in engineering, subscribe to our newsletters such as Design Weekly, 3D Printing, Aerospace and Defense, Digital Transformation, Simulation, or a weekly roundup at Engineering.com/subscribe. For our deeper engineering series, visit Engineering.com TV for exclusive shows like Designing the Future, Manufacturing the Future, and the Engineering Roundtable, found exclusively on Engineering.com TV. Thanks for tuning in.